Good morning and welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us. This is the Inland Empire Regional Conversation. Purpose of today is for Inland Empire arts organizations and artists to understand the regional, state, and federal landscape for arts and cultural advocacy, and to know a little bit more about our work at the Californians for the Arts. In turn, we want to better understand how more specifically the issues for your region, how we can best represent them at the regional, state, and federal level. So looking forward to this conversation. Many of us have been meeting on these Zoom calls monthly, and we've got a lot of new people joining us today. Patrick Bryan, Riverside Arts Council, and Jenny Kane, Arts Connection. We're both on the board of directors of Californians for the Arts and California Arts Advocates. And we are pleased to welcome Julie Baker, the executive director of the Californians for the Arts. And just a little bit of overview of our purpose for today. We want to, again, cultivate a stronger regional coalition and exchange ideas. And as Californians for the Arts, we want to listen and ensure we are responsive to community voices and regional specific issues. This is an ongoing conversation. It's very important for us at Californians for the Arts to have touch points with our community of arts advocates so we can best represent you in our advocacy and policy initiatives. And we want to emphasize that these are going to be short presentations. Focus is on our conversation and reimagining what our sector can do to be a part of the solution to the COVID-19 pandemic. Jenny, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk a little bit about the housekeeping.
Well, welcome to your 1 millionth Zoom call of COVID. Some of you I've seen on calls recently, and welcome back to Hollywood Squares. If you've never been on a Zoom call before, just a few things. You know where your own bathroom is, so feel free to use it. The chat function is a way you can introduce yourselves, since we're not going to go through each person one by one today. If you feel like saying hello, who you are, where you're from, what you do, please feel free to use that. Also, if you have, just ways to communicate, questions, whatnot, you can put that in the chat. We're going to get into some specific polls later after we go through our speakers. And if you're not speaking, please keep yourself on mute. If you happen to have small children or other people in your house like I do, you can try to block them out by moving your computer. Anyway, sorry, I wasn't planning to be a comedian this morning, but I'm really excited to have you all here and to hear stories and just the successes people have been having and the work we have ahead. So thanks for joining us from the remote parts of your world.
Did you guys want to introduce your first speaker? Jenny?
Sorry, I didn't.
I'll go ahead and take that because she is a Riverside County Board of Supervisors member. Karen Spiegel, I'd like to introduce you.
Well, thank you, Patrick. You know, this is not an organization I'm not familiar with or your mission. I did serve in the city of Corona for 16 years on the city council and mayor 4 times. We elect mayors from within. And hosted a few meetings trying to promote the arts. We have the Fender Arts Museum. We had that for many years. That has since closed. And many other talents. I know Don Kindred's on here with the Corona Symphony. We have a tremendous arts community, and so taking that the step further, now at the county, I'm learning that Riverside as well has got, I mean, I already knew that through your museums and stuff, but the small organizations that meet the needs of the community are incredible. You know, it doesn't have to always be the big ones. It could be all the small ones that touches our lives, and particularly our children, because our children will flourish with more that's added to their lives. And I know we're in an unprecedented time. You know, when you have a small organization or any organization and you go through your ups and downs financially, this one is one with no guidelines. We have rules, and I just want to briefly explain to you is that we are working with the state. We want this ability to open things safely and as quick as we can. Our children, I have my grandson here in the house, and he's at school virtually. And it's, you know, they learn, but they miss out on a lot of the interaction. There's a lot of things that we all are missing out on. And as long as in our minds we keep that as temporary and understand that we at the county are trying to make sure that we are in line with the state, we follow the state guidance. And I do want you to know is that what has happened for us is that every time we step outside the lines, the state threatens to take back funding. We have funding that is CARES Act funding. We've committed, those of you know, we have nonprofit grants, we have business grants, we have for the homeless, we have now a youth community core. We have many grant programs that we have done out of the CARES Act trying to touch the different areas. And so if you're at the nonprofit, I hope that you apply for that. We do have a small amount left. They're up to $10,000. Free money, as long as you follow the guidelines. You show that you've been affected by COVID. They're available. We want to make sure that when we come out the other side of this, that our lives will continue on. And arts is a very important part. We've seen that happen when schools have chosen to take away some of those functions from our children, the difference in that next generation. So we want to make sure things are all in line. And I'm saying it's taking it away. The only way that people have the ability to get people to follow rules is by having consequences. And the state's consequence is our funding, which is tremendous challenge, because just on the loss of revenues from people not working, from having to fill a tremendous amount of unemployment, having, I don't need to tell you, you know all the different sources of funding that have been lost. And of course, sales tax revenues, which is almost half of our budget. And if we have less sales because stores are closed, there's less monies coming in. And so we need to work together to do this safely and, for me, quickly, because we have this financial challenge, we have this emotional challenge, we have a physical challenge, and all these now have bled together. And I think that it's overwhelming past the physical challenge. We understand if all of us could wear our masks, do the social distancing, and just be safe, stay home if you're not feeling well. I will let you know, most of you probably already know, I was a candidate, fighting candidate, and I was, in fact, I'm just coming out of my isolation. And so I had COVID, and you have lingering effects. So the positive is in Riverside County, we have more than half of the ones that we have documented recovery. We have less than, just over 800 and, I don't have the numbers, 820 deaths. What I do want to let you know is there's going to be a big jump. Those of you who aren't following California CDC, the director stepped down. There is a major problem in the testing, and people want to blame the county, and we'll take the blame, but the reality is it's up at the state, and that's partly why they're having people resigning up there. It is quite a mess, and you're going to see a big jump. We're all going to see a big jump. I'm hoping our jump is going to be more of our negative testing. We're trying to follow with ours numbers, but if you've been tested recently, you'll realize there's a very long lag time. And testing, we want everyone tested, because those of us that are negative, I was negative for a while, that number goes in as a negative test, which helps us balance out the positives. And yes, it's a serious virus, but we've had other serious viruses, even much more than we've ever faced in America. And this is alongside of everything else. And I just am trying to share, be safe. It's not about just you, it's about those around you and your family. We want our families to be able to prosper when we have the opportunity to continue to thrive. Did you want more details? I'm not sure exactly what you were looking for.
That's great, Karen. Thank you so much for joining us today. Julie, you're next up on the agenda.
Well, thank you. I'm Julie Baker. I'm the Executive Director of Californians for the Arts and California Arts Advocates. We have two organizations. One is the nonprofit 501c3, Californians for the Arts, and our job there is really to build public awareness of the value and impact of arts and culture in the state of California. California Arts Advocates, we are a C4. We have a lobbyist, Jason Schmeltzers, who's here with us today from Shaw, Yoder, and Antwi, Schmelzer, and Lang. And thank you, Superintendent Spiegel, for first of all, I'm glad to hear that you're doing well, and I hope that you continue in your recovery. I think it's really important for us to remember we are still in the midst of a public health crisis. I know it's hard to forget in some ways, but in some ways it's starting to be like Groundhog Day. I don't know about you, but it is for me. And so sometimes we have to remember that in government, that is entirely what they're working on. Every day as they're trying to manage a public health crisis and now a financial crisis that is on top of that as well. And so I want to give quickly this federal and state report in terms of what is going on for the arts. I am the state captain, co-state captain to Americans for the Arts for federal advocacy. As you guys know, and hopefully you're accessing some of the CARES funding that's happened not only through PPP, PUI, PUA, we'll give you all the acronyms, but also directly in grants, hopefully within your own communities that they've accessed, that they've allocated to arts and culture funding, which they can through funding from the state and federal governments. I also wanted to mention an interesting statistic that PPP loans in this round of CARES Act funding went to $1.8 billion to nonprofit arts. And I think that's important to recognize and that's across the United States. And one reason I want to say it is because a lot of people are sort of saying, well, Germany is doing $2 billion to the arts. This is how we do it in the United States, because we do it through PPP loans, that sort of thing. There is also the Save Our Stages Act, the Restart Act. Those are others that you should be looking at. But right now we're in an impasse in terms of the second stimulus package. And so we're hoping that they'll come back together and we'll see something soon, because we know that people are running out of funds, particularly since that $600 is gone. And so many people in our sector are unemployed. About 68% of arts and culture workers are unemployed across the United States. Quickly on the state front, as you may know, one of our main goals is always to build the Arts Council's budget, the state arts agency, which is the California Arts Council. For many years, it was at $1 million for the state of California. We are now at about $26 million in ongoing funds for the state. Beginning of the year, very different picture. We were looking at one-time funds increase of over about $30 million. Then we had to switch to protect the budget. We were able to protect the budget in this last round in July. And so that $26 million is ongoing. I encourage you, please, to apply if you are an artist right now for the $1,000 grant that is being offered through the CCI, which is Center for Cultural Innovation. And Jade Alyssa from our office is going to put that in the chat there so you can see. It's an easy application. It goes, I think, till August 18th. And the reason why this is important is particularly for your community is that I'm also trying to work on a statewide fund for the arts. I'm trying to illustrate that communities like Inland Empire are not able to access funds like other communities. LA County has a lot going on in terms of arts and culture funding, and it's great, and we're really happy at their success of that happening, but your neighboring counties, Riverside, Inland Empire, are not having the same success in terms of accessing that. So we wanted to see if we can get a statewide fund, but you also need to apply when there are things available. So please look at that. We're also working on a lot of different things in terms of jobs creation strategies. There's a lot of things that the arts can do even when we're closed. We know that arts and culture workers and arts organizations are innovative, we're creative, we're providing mental health services, we're providing arts and ways to distract people. We're as the supervisor said, and I love this, that the small organizations that meet the needs of the community, absolutely. We are those cultural community connectors, and you're going to hear from some of those people doing the amazing work in your own community. And we need to continue to focus on how we can be of service during a public health crisis, letting your elected officials know how artists and arts organizations are already providing those services, pivoting to continue to access their constituents and the people that you serve, and that we also need to be compensated for that work. So let's look for other ways that we can find contracts. And there's a great portal that Cal Nonprofits worked with Assemblymember Rivas to get for the state agencies, that you can look for other ways to get funding, not just through the state arts agency. So let's think about arts integration, not just arts separation. Let's think about artists are second responders. We are not running into a building saving life, but we are here rebuilding lives. That is what we do on a daily basis in our work. That's why we get up in the morning. And I think that it's important for the elected officials, the people who hold the purse strings, whether it's private funders or your lawmakers, to understand the impact that we are making. We are much more than entertainment. We are not just a big piece of the economy, which we are, but we are also making vital social connections for our communities, and in particular now with distance learning, arts education, very, very important aspect of that. So make sure also you're showing up your school board meetings, and arts education is not cut. Let's make sure that that stays there. So I've got lots I could continue to report on, but we're trying to keep it fast because we really want to hear from you. And my job is to represent you at the state and federal level. So I need to understand what's happening within your own community. But quickly, I'm going to turn it over to Jason Schmelzer, who is our longtime lobbyist, who's really helped to advise us to get to a place where we've seen the Arts Council's budget increase, as well as working on legislation such as Assembly Bill 5 and other pieces. Jason, if you could just speak really quickly to what is the sort of the mood, what's happening overall in terms of what is the state government facing right now?
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate it. And I'm going to add to my charge just a little pumping up of Julie. I don't think even those who know her and her organization closest know how much she does for you up in Sacramento. So any way that you can facilitate what she's doing, it's hugely important. You have a never-ending ally and champion in her. So please support what she's doing. The mood in Sacramento, I think, is what you would expect, right? I keep trying to remind myself throughout this process that probably everybody is trying to do their best. And I think that's what you should generally apply to the California State Legislature. You strip away elected office. Supervisor knows this. You strip away elected office, and elected officials are just normal people with normal human problems. And they have the added burden of having to figure out the rules that dictate all of our lives across the board. And I think the legislature is struggling, obviously, with COVID, just like all of us are, to come up with how they can best kind of do the things that everybody needs. So they're really trying to focus the best they can on a couple of different areas. One is COVID, homelessness, obviously, as it relates to COVID, and then wildfires, because we can't have the state burning down in the middle of a pandemic. That would be extra bad. And I think that's largely the mood. They're very focused. They don't seem to have a lot of energy for nonsense. Even, at least in California, the election is even a little bit quieter here this year than it is. I know national is a whole different thing, but even politics is less politicky in 2020. But the mood it's a little bit sour. There's a lot of frustration. As the supervisor pointed out, not just businesses and nonprofits are struggling financially. The state is struggling. Counties are struggling. There's a lot of different reasons why people are struggling. I think everybody's trying to do their best. So the best thing that you can do, I think, is bring that local advocacy to the district offices of your legislators. And Julie and California Arts Advocates are really good at facilitating that type of engagement. But we need your voices in the actual communities, right? Because at the end of the day, a really good thing for all of you sometimes is that in situations like this, they listen less to people like me who walk around in suits shaking my finger at people, and they listen to actual human beings in their districts. That's you. So to the extent that you can speak up on behalf of the arts, the importance of the arts, the needs of artists and arts organizations from your very local perspective directly to elected officials, you're doing immensely valuable work, and we'd encourage you to do that. So Julie, I think that's probably about as much as you need from me. I'm happy to answer any questions. So thank you.
Terrific. Thank you.
I want to point out that I learned more from one session with Jason in somebody's office about advocating on behalf of the arts. So yeah, we're very lucky to have him as our lobbyist. And he's got great taste in music too. So Jenny, I'm going to turn it over to you for the next two introductions.
Thanks, Patrick. Josh, are you on the phone? I think sometimes you call in. Are you the 909 number?
Yes, I am.
All right.
Thanks for the invite.
Josh Candelaria is the Director of Governmental and Legislative Affairs for the San Bernardino County Administrative Office. He's going to talk a little bit about what the County of San Bernardino has been doing with their COVID compliant business partnership program. They've done a lot to expand it recently and have done a great job trying to include arts and culture organizations as well as individual artists coming up here with some of those changes too. So looking forward to hearing those updates from Josh. Thanks, Josh.
Yeah, no, thank you. And first of all, just I really appreciate the invite. And just Jennifer has been a fantastic advocate for you here at the county level. So just three quick things. One, the county really recognizes, I think, the contribution the arts make to our quality of life for our constituents as well as the economic benefit. And two, the county has been a historical partner when it comes to advocating for the arts, whether that's specifically, helping to increase funding for the Arts Council. I know my board has been very active, as well as Supervisor Rutherford in particular. She serves on the Move Forward. So arts is something that's a very much part of the culture of the county. And then three, just lastly, I think the COVID compliant business partnership program, kind of to build upon what Supervisor Spiegel said, the county also has a program. We recognize it's important to get the economy going, but in a very thoughtful process, ensuring that we have at least the necessary resources for businesses to kind of mitigate, I think, some of the impacts, whether that's a contribution to their, just resources for PPE or just other kind of, I think, things the county can provide. So that's something that the board set aside about $30 million from the CARES Act, specifically for businesses, so they could apply for PPE. We also have a program to where we're providing just additional, I think, items. I think 105 nonprofits so far have reached out to the county. And we just really look forward to, I think, working with you, and just a pleasure to be here this morning. So.
And it looks like,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Jenny, I think you froze.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, Josh, could you just mention some of the ways you've expanded who's eligible recently?
Oh yeah, of course. So the program initially, we just opened it kind of more broad. So nonprofits are eligible to receive $2,500. All nonprofits with a storefront or physical space are now eligible to participate. And so those are kind of ways we wanted to ensure. So far, I believe about $10 million has been allocated. So there's about $20 million left over. So we're looking at doing second rounds. One of the benefits of the program is, in addition to, I think, just receiving funds, you're also able to, I think, have access to PPE through the county's cost. We recognize as a challenge, I think, with the scarcity of getting some of those equipment or some of those supplies. And so the county, as a kind of as a partner, those nonprofits can also get PPE at the cost that the county gives. And so that's one way we wanted to help and contribute to some of the businesses that are impacted.
It's great when the arts are also, and nonprofits are recognized as small businesses. And I think that's a really critical advocacy point that it seems kind of crazy that we still have to make, but we appreciate that your county understands that. So thank you for that.
Great. And our last but not least speaker is, we're going to have Josiah Bruni of Music Changing Lives speak to some of the work he's been doing recently, as well as some of the overlapping work of the Arts for IE collaborative that recently, through all of the support we've received from you all and the community, that we're moving forward with on a couple of our key initiatives for bringing that collaborative together. So I'm going to let him speak to all of that because there's some great work that's happening, and want to lift all of that up. Josiah, take it away.
Awesome. Good morning, everyone. How are you doing today? Thank you all for your support and your advocacy for the Inland Empire and for us artists. As Julie mentioned, we are our second responders, and we're doing the healing on the grounds. I'll share with you a few things this evening that we've been actually getting done right here. Can I share a screen or just share the links, Patrick? Who's the host?
That'd be Jade Alyssa, I believe.
Okay, there we go. Awesome. Thank you, Jade. All right. So to kind of keep arts going in our community and the vibe, what we've been doing is we started a No Justice, No Peace tour where it's KNOW, where we want people to know what justice is, know what peace is, and we've been doing several mural projects. So we elected 15 cities that we're going to tour throughout the Inland Empire. We've attacked 3 of them so far, and the first was San Bernardino here that you can see. And individuals come out, we practice social distancing, and they're able to paint by numbers. We have several different artists that's come out and sketch out the images, and then they're able to participate with their families and actually paint these different murals. Like I mentioned, we've done 3 cities thus far. The first was San Bernardino, the second was Rialto. The Rialto mural, this one was The Light in Me honors the light in you, teaching kids basically that we have to be that beacon of light to go on into the world and shine bright and bring future hope into our communities. And so we elected 11 different Rialto natives that were honored, from the first mayor to several different, like the first Grammy Award winning artists and things like that. And we'll share these links so you can go back and read them yourselves as well. But again, we practice these events with social distancing and community involvement. And the last one we just did was in the beautiful city of Riverside, where we honored several hometown heroes at the corner of 14th and Main. So if you are in the Riverside area or any of these Inland Empire areas, please drive by and see the murals as well. They're coming out really, really beautiful. And like I said, these are all done by local artists here in the community. And thanks to our gracious sponsors, we've been able to now get them actually sponsored and paid for doing their work. So the future vision for this one now, we're going to Grand Terrace, and we'll be honoring veterans and also current and active military members and services. So if you know anyone that is active members of the Army or any branch of military, and they're from the Inland Empire, we'll be doing a call out to have you submit their names to be honored. And then we'll also be honoring some of the fallen heroes in the city of Grand Terrace next. So that's kind of what we've been doing for arts. We've also had a slew of other things that we've been doing, like feeding. We now distribute over 25,000 meals a week throughout the Inland Empire through One Inland Empires Collaborative and several different individuals. I'd like to thank the city of Riverside really for helping us step up and opening up the first one where we actually did drive-throughs because it showed the need. And then once the people seen the need, it actually branched out to other cities as well. Another one is we now have formed the Arts for IE. If you guys haven't heard about that yet, it's a collaboration of artists here in the Inland Empire. And we're looking to raise a start of $10,000 to help deposit into one of our local community foundations to start a fund for Inland Empire artists to support you guys here in the IE so that we could start bringing more money just for arts here in the Inland Empire. After that, we've also been doing advocating for the arts locally and statewide with the voice campaign that we're doing with the California Endowment. It's called Speak Up for What's Right. We have about 5 to 6 artists that we've chosen from the Inland Empire that do poetry, singing, and all different types of mediums to speak up for what's right. We also just ended our We Art One art contest campaign, and we had several submissions where we have artists submitting different mediums of art to speak up against racism, hatred, domestic violence, anything that is bothering us right now in our system, but showing how we are one, and that's WEART one. And I'd like to thank Jennifer Kane for that name. We were just brainstorming and she gave me that. So thank you for that, Jen. And then also now we're creating an online community for our students. So all of our services have gone virtual. In our virtual changing showcase for students. where we have now been graciously sponsored by Jose Medina, California Arts Council, and a few others, to give our children an avenue to still express themselves through music and arts, and host now performance art campaigns through our website, thechangingliveshowcase.com. So since COVID has hit us, we've moved like the Titanic and avoided to sink. And I want to thank my team and my board for that, because without them, our children would not have a voice for the arts. And so that's another thing. We're also now, we did our regional art survey with Jennifer Kane and Patrick Bryan as well from Riverside and San Bernardino Arts County. I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is the first time we've done a dual county survey to figure out what artists need. Am I right, guys?
Yes.
Thumbs up, right? Yeah, so that was the first time we did that. And then,
it's still open. Sorry, just real fast. It's still open. I'm going to put a link in the chat, and we're still under reporting. So I'm leaving it open for a little while longer. So please, if you haven't, or your other organizations you know of haven't filled it out, please, please, please do.
And let me just jump in too to just say how important data is, and really not only locally, but also for us at the state level. So please do fill these out. It is important.
Truly. And the reason it's so important, guys, is because there's not too much data for us artists here in the Inland Empire. We cry a lot that we don't get the same funding that Oakland or San Francisco gets, or LA for that matter, but it's time for us to band together and show what we do need. So this survey will help us do that. And it will help Jennifer and Julie and Patrick and Jason campaign for us in Sacramento like we need them to. And then bring it to our elected officials like Madam Karen Spiegel and everyone else to help us get their support too. So I want to thank you for all you do. Right now, our main action point that we're asking is that individuals can donate at least $1 or $2 to our Arts Fund campaign. Vanessa, if you'll share that link, or Jennifer, is on a Facebook thing. We are trying to raise $10,000, and this money will go back to artists in the Inland Empire to do certain contests and different art projects. It will be our first one, our first trial. So we'd love your support. Again, as small as $1 to $2 is all we're asking. There's 4 million people here in the Inland Empire, if I'm not mistaken, plus, right? So if we just got $1 from each of the Inland Empire members, we'd be set for life, I think. So that's our ultimate goal. I hope you will join us in donating at least $1 to $2. And then also, if you have students that are in the Inland Empire, or even adults that want to compete in our Changing Life Showcase, our deadline is August 15th. We're looking for all sorts of mediums, and we will be sharing those links in there. So again, I thank everyone that's been a part of this movement. It hit with COVID-19, the stay-at-home order, and I contacted Jennifer and I asked her to graciously help us start the One Inland Empire branch of Arts for IE, and this movement has now taken fire. And so I thank you all for joining us on this journey, and I look forward to what's to come. There's several individuals that have received funding from the conversations that we've been hosting, and we will be doing follow-ups to bring you that data as well, to show the economic impact and social impact that we've had in our communities. And I want to just thank everyone that's been a part of this, especially IEHP right now. IEHP, this is a new one that I didn't mention. They've graciously stepped up, and now we are now receiving 2 semis every Monday of produce and milk. So I distribute 4,800 gallons of milk and over 40,000 pounds of food every Monday with the help of IEHP. And we're looking to do this throughout our whole Inland Empire. And so we're gonna need your support. We're gonna need your help. If we could get financial support and volunteer support to take this throughout, again, the whole Inland Empire, that's our ultimate vision. So you will be seeing those call to actions as well. I thank you guys. And again, I'm Josiah Bruni, CEO and founder of Music Changing Lives. And I thank you all for what we've done so far.
Thank you, Josiah.
We need to clone Josiah, please. Can we have?
We're going to clone you, Josiah.
Yes, I'd love that. Let's do it.
You make, and I know there's more people on this call doing work, also to make that type of impact.
And I can just thank Josiah for making the statement about IEHP. I sit on the board for IEHP, and I want you to know is that most of that effort is the employees.
Yes.
So that we as the organization help financially, but our employees with IEHP are the ones that are reaching out and getting involved in the communities. And they're the ones that came up with the trailers of food. Just incredible. So, you know, I appreciate hearing from IEHP, but I want you all to know it's down within the organization. So that's what makes it even extra special. Thank you.
And communities. With that, it started 2 weeks ago, and we already have about 25 organizations that we blessed right here in the low income, in the lower Inland Empire, and now we're looking to go to the high desert as well. So again, we'll need support to make it grow, but thank you IEHP and everyone that made that happen, because
I think it's so important to show how arts organizations are, as we're saying, go way beyond entertainment, and that you are those cultural and community connectors, and how important the work is that you're doing, and you're trusted in your communities. And we really need to lift that up right now. Jade Alyssa from Californians for the Arts is going to run a poll right now. It just has 2 quick questions. If you scroll through it, it shouldn't take very long, but this helps us. We're doing this on every one of these. Just so you know, we're doing 9 regional conversations across the state of California. We are your only comprehensive advocacy organization for arts and culture, meaning we cover all the bases. And we work in conjunction with California Association Museums, AXO, the Symphony Orchestras, California Alliance for Arts Education, but we are the only ones that are comprehensive. But we're a very small organization. We're actually only have 2 employees, myself and Jade Alyssa. So it is really important for us to have these regional conversations where we hear from you, so that we can break it up and expand our network and be able to really represent you effectively. And the way to be effective, of course, is to be informed. So we're seeing that being filled out right now, and we appreciate that. And again, if there's 2 questions, so you just scroll down to get the second question. And then we would want to transition into a conversation. So hopefully we're all good at multitasking, and we can do both. So we could start to facilitate that now. Basically, if you want to raise your hand, if you have any questions for anybody on the call specifically about some of the things that were talked about, or if you want to bring forward some things that are really critical in what is happening within your world right now that you want us to know as your advocates, so that we can properly represent. What are some of the challenges? You're answering that right now, but if anyone wants to raise their hand, pretty much that's how we're going to do it. So there's a raise hand feature. Katie Porter did I get your name right? Is it Katie? Go ahead, just unmute yourself.
Hi, yes, I was scrambling to find the actual raise hand icon, but I'm glad you saw me. So this is related, I think, to all of us in that we are all trying to provide work for artists. And I'm wondering how other arts organizations are handling AB5 and this issue of needing to convert independent contractors to employees, and how that's being handled by other organizations.
Does anyone else want to share what they've done? Josiah, did you want to share? Go ahead.
We have just started really diving into it, and basically trying to, how I read it, it says if the artist or the independent contractor doesn't have like a business that they do themselves that way, then they have to become your employee. And I'm not sure if I read that right, but that's what I'm going to be talking with my lawyers about. And so what I'm now convincing my artists to do is to set up their own companies to where they can do this type of work for other agencies as well, and not just myself. And then create a set standard of saying, okay, this is my hourly rate for teaching classes. This is my schedule. You can't have them on a set schedule to where you're like, oh, you have to be here from 9 to 5, or you have to be here Monday through Friday. You have to give them that freedom to say, I can work Wednesday from 2 to 3. I can work Thursday from 1 to 2. And then that is electing them to still become an independent contractor.
Well, so I guess the complication becomes, because there's an A, B, and C requirement, and the B part is that they have to be engaging in something that is not already part of your mission. Mm-hmm. So if you're hiring an artist and your mission is to create art, that's where the complication arises.
So
Mhm.
Katie, I've worked a lot on this bill,
Okay.
and we are actually going to be doing. Go to our website. We're doing a webinar on this at the end of the month with Silicon
Okay.
Valley Creates, but anyone can be on it, and we'll do it with an employment lawyer as well. But just very quickly, first of all, fine artists are exempt under AB 5, number one.
Okay.
So fine artist has not been defined in the legislation, but we all know in the sector that really is a visual artist, right? So if you're employing visual artists, they are exempt, but make sure they pass the
Well-
Borel test, which is your existing test. That's number one.
So
Number-
literary artists, so are they writers, master writers?
I would,
in the
this was
workshop.
when you get into the subject to interpretation, and the problem with Assembly Bill 5, as well as Dynamics, which was the decision it's based on, is that there hasn't been enough time to actually have these worked out in the courts. It's
Mhm.
really up to you to make that determination. And if you can justify why you say that is under what you think is a fine artist, and you feel comfortable with that determination, then I would say that you can look at that as an exemption. I'm not giving you legal advice. I
No,
would
of
talk
course.
to a lawyer. I would also suggest that the other thing is right now, AB 2257
Mhm.
is the follow-up legislation to AB 5. It is actually has an urgency clause, which means that if she gets, the author, Assemblymember Gonzalez gets 2/3 majority, it will go into effect immediately, which would be upon the governor's signature as well as retroactively. There are a number of exemptions in that bill for musicians in certain circumstances. So example, if you're hiring a musician for one night, then you have to hire them. If they're in a symphony orchestra, yes, right now they are not exempt. And then there's some things about master classes. Also, if you're hiring an artist to do a master class for a week, they are exempt. So there's some new additions that are, and we continue as the advocacy organization to work with the author as well as with the labor unions on addressing some of the hardships and unintended consequences that this has caused for our sector, in particular small budget arts organizations who are already financially fragile in making this transition when we're also systemically undercapitalized as a sector. And so it makes it really difficult for us to make the transition to employ people. Although I also just want to say one of our goals as a sector is always to pay people equitably and to pay artists as they should and to give them benefits. So I don't think that the overall tenets of what they're trying to achieve is necessarily a bad thing, but we need to figure out how to make that work for our sector. So we've worked on this issue for about 1.5 years since it came out. So check out, we have a section on our website around AB 5, and there's a lot more work to be done there. And then definitely come to our webinar at the end of August also.
Absolutely. Okay. And I will check it out. Thank you.
Yeah, and feel free to email me. I'm not a lawyer, but I've definitely studied this a lot, so happy to give some direction, not advice.
Okay. Sure.
Are there other, before we take a look at the poll, does anyone else have anything they want to raise their hand about right now? Other things that you're struggling with that you feel like the state could be clearer about, or your local officials could be clearer about, or guidance or funding resources? What are some of the top of mind things that you want us to be knowing about besides AB 5? All right. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I had one. So with the guidelines from I guess this would be to Ms. Spiegel. So with the guidelines that are coming down from CDC for like no large gatherings or things like this, and then they're saying, well, you could do gatherings of 10 or 50 or more. How is it that you guys are going to start implementing for the community centers to be reopened or realigned for these kids that are affected in these low-income communities?
We have been working closely with Sacramento CDC and trying to find ways to allow our children the opportunities to continue and thrive. The community centers are not yet open. They were beginning to open, and then, as you well know, once things opened, things closed rather quickly right the next week. That was a challenge. What the problem is, or at least the guidelines are addressing, is keeping the 6 feet distance. That is one of the key elements You know, when Riverside County rescinded the face mask, and then San Bernardino followed right after that, we were following the California guidance. In fact, people still don't realize that in 2018, the governor made it mask. So it's really
Oh, looks like maybe having some internet problems. And that's something that we know is an issue, which is internet and infrastructure. It's a problem for all of us who live in the rural communities as well. She's down.
I'm sorry, and if you like, while we're waiting for Supervisor Spiegel, I can kind of speak to San Bernardino County. With respect, I think, to some, at least what we're seeing regarding, I think, the increase of COVID, it is a particular certain age demographic. We did a survey of our contact tracers. They went out into the field and obviously contacting individuals. Our survey came back that 70%, I think, of the individuals that received, unfortunately, were exposed to COVID was from a family gathering. And so we recognize, I think we're trying to address and help curb that behavior with respect to, face mask and just different targeted campaigns to ensure the importance of it. But we do recognize, I think some of it isn't industry driven, but it is just from those family gatherings. I was interested, I saw a survey, I think the California Fitness Association put out to about 700 different gyms, and there was a pretty small nominal exposure of COVID when there was face mask to their actual, individuals that use those facilities. And so it really is, I think, at least in our county, the data is showing it's kind of more from family gatherings as opposed to, I think, some of the other different specific industries that have been closed for the past several.
Thank you very much, because that's where I was going, is the gatherings. And because you're around familiar people, you think you're safe, yet they may be asymptomatic. So that's what the challenge is the gatherings. So when I was saying that when we restarted opening, everybody just thought it was back to normal and didn't take precautions. And that's why I keep saying, keep your distance, 6 feet, your masks, and we can move on much quicker. But because people aren't doing that, we get too comfortable in our family gatherings. That's why if you go back and look at the time of graduations, 4th of July, Memorial Day, the week later we had spikes after all these because of people gathered together. And so this is anticipated, and when we're talking about in the fall having another spike, it's gatherings and people getting together and just letting their guard down. And if we can continue to move forward and take those precautions, I'm hoping things will get back to at least stay comfortable, and that our children and all of us can continue to thrive. I mean, that's the most important thing.
I think one of the things I just want to throw out there too is that, what we are trying to do is a behavioral change, massive behavioral change. And one of the things that is what artists are really good at is helping to communicate behavioral change. And so I would encourage also our electeds to look to the arts sector, to give contracts to artists and arts organizations to help provide those public health messages. Because I think that that's something that you can look to as a jobs creation strategy for the artists who are currently unemployed to help, but also at the same time to work on behavioral change. And that is something we are quite good at in terms of being those cultural community connectors that people will actually trust us and listen to us more maybe than an elected official. So just something to throw out there and something that you can think to do. Did you want to say something, Josh? And I see Beverly up.
Yeah, no, I think that's such a great point, because I think, images are so powerful. And I think that's why, incorporating individuals that know the region, know the demographics can really help, I think, facilitate that conversation. So that's very well taken, at least from our perspective, because it is a particular demographic that, we recognize that's where I think this community spread is coming from. And so we just appreciate it. I will definitely take that back and communicate that to the organization.
That's great. That's part of our jobs creation strategy. So thank you so much for the art sector. Beverly, to do North.
Yeah, I just had a question for all the arts organizations. Are any of you having success with filling out your PPP forgiveness paperwork? Has anyone gotten to that step yet?
I'm told that there is some pretty strong movement towards making it even simpler, so that it would be a one sentence. It's a question that basically says, did you use the money to for payroll purposes? And if you just say yes, then it's forgiven. But there's supposed to be an answer for this by the end of this month. And if I hear more, I will disseminate that information to this group.
Thank you.
Yeah, our bank's financial provider said just wait because he does think it's going to get simpler and you don't have to fill out yet. Steve Thomas, you were up next.
Yes, hi. I live in Rancho Cucamonga. I volunteer for as a board member for Arts Connection, and I also volunteer as a board member for Chaffee Community Museum of Art. We're a small museum in the city of Ontario, and we've played with the idea of opening by invitation only. Our museum is about 4,000 square feet, and we have within that space we have 1, 2, 3, 4 galleries, and our typical daily attendance is 20 to 30 people, Thursday through Sunday. And with these kind of numbers, and especially if we were to do it by appointment only, we could limit no more than 7 or 8 people at a time in the museum. And so my question is there any talk in Sacramento about what small museums might do? Granted, LACMA, SFOMOMA, all these, you open the door there, there'll be 1,000 people there trying to get in. Our museum is very different than that. I did send a letter to the state and got a very nice response saying, no, there's no public allowed in museums. So I just reiterate, is there any talk in Sacramento about the difference between small museums, medium museums, large museums?
I know that, and I saw Josh also maybe wanted to add in, but we are hearing this consistently in our regional conversations, but particularly in the museum world, but even in performing arts world, could we have recording sessions indoors and then broadcast and that sort of thing right now? Could we do one, somebody live outdoors playing in front of a restaurant? Is that allowed right now, et cetera, et cetera. So I think one of the things that is frustrating for our sector is that we're primarily in the phase 4, which of course is a vaccine. And so, we keep saying it's a year out. We keep not actually lowering that year. So it's I think what we're looking at is how can we actually do some phased in things with public health okays. They were open, museums were open, but as you know, before the second round. California Association of Museums also has been very active on this front, trying to make it a local issue, that your local public health officials are the ones who make the determination. So I would also, if you haven't already, contact your local public health officials, address what is specifically that you're talking about, how you can do this in a safe way. I think it's also really important that you look at their guidelines. I'm sure you have already online. They see, covid.ca.gov has industry guidelines, and there are guidelines for museums.
Yes.
Pretty much the only part of the art sector has guidelines and recording so far. But,
yeah, what's interesting? I'm sorry, this is Josh again. So even though we've had some changes, I think on the state level, the governor, or at least the state stay-at-home order is still in place. And so that hasn't changed. And so the conversation, I think, at least from our perspective, is really the state, when they came out with the stay-at-home order, it was kind of non-essential, essential. Then the conversation evolved to more low-risk, high-risk acuity. And then, the conversation is back now on, essential, non-essential. And unfortunately, because we're on the monitoring list, I think to Jennifer's point, we're, on certain phases. And so we've advocated for a lot of local discretion. My board's disposition has been, we want to provide as much flexibility as possible. I think with the last, kind of information that came down from the state, it didn't really give us that discretion. And so they kind of moved everything outdoors. The good news is that with our testing capacity, for a while there, we were having supply chain issues. Now it's back online. We are seeing those numbers start to drop. And so if you go to our website, just SB County's COVID-19, you can just Google it. There's a dashboard that we have, and you can actually there's a small tab that says CDP, California Department of Health monitoring list. And you can kind of see how we're doing against the state's indicators. And, you know, things are going well. I think people are starting to wear their masks. We're mitigating, I think, the impacts, and we're hoping to get off that monitor list relatively soon. So.
I'm going to go to Amy and then I'll go to Katie. I just want Amy to get a chance since Katie, if your hand's up, and I don't know if you want it to be up. Go ahead, Amy Bouye.
Bouye, hi.
Hiya.
Hi, Bouye. I just wanted some more clarification about the closings. There's been a lot of chatter in my region of Joshua Tree about what our galleries consider museums, and I think they are based on the guidelines I've read. But some people in my area are agreeing that galleries should be considered retail spaces. So as a gallery director of nonprofit, I'm standing pretty strong saying, no, I do not want to reopen. I think it's unsafe for our volunteers and our artists to reopen at this point. But there's a couple other galleries that are disagreement with me. And so I just was curious what your interpretation of the guidelines were, especially for San Bernardino County.
That's a good question. What I'll do is, if you don't mind, I'll follow back up with our public health. I don't want to give you any wrong information, but you know, and we recognize, I think there's different people that have different dispositions when it comes to opening or not, and that's something I think we really do take in consideration. We have a long conversation with some of our stakeholders. I know Jennifer has been a process of it. We've had individuals, like for instance, churches in particular, a very long conversation. Some would rather stay closed, and some would want to open. So we recognize, I think, that local discretion. And we want to provide as much flexibility that we can, that the state provides. And so I'll do a little bit more research with respect to see if it kind of falls in that retail bucket or museums, and get back to you if you don't mind.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you so much for your help.
And, you know, again, that's a really good point, and something that we're hearing consistently across the regions, which is, you know, the arts, and this is similar to the AB5 issue, which is that we don't fit neatly into one bucket, right? We're so diverse in the way that we work, and all the different ways that we deliver our programs, that it's challenging to fit into, you know, which guidelines are we in? Are we in retail? Are we in museums specifically? That's easier, but that sort of thing. So that is something we're going to have to look at for our sector for sure, and work with public health and the administration, and as well as your local is really important, as Jason was saying. It's almost 11, but I wanted to make sure that anybody else who has anything they'd like to share, Patrick, Jenny.
This has been a great conversation. And again, it's not the only conversation that we want to have. Of course, many of us get together and we talk once a month via Zoom. But in this particular format with Californians for the Arts, California Arts Advocates, this is an ongoing conversation. Julie sits in more meetings than probably anybody that I know, but she's always willing to do more. And now that she's running for the school board, I just have to put a plug out there. So everybody send her good thoughts. I know it's just going to get busier, but again, she is a great advocate for us at the state level. And locally, we need to do things like fill out that survey, like apply for that funding. The $1,000 grants through the California Arts and Californian, what is it? Center for Creative Innovation. Yeah, that's so if we don't apply for those things, then that funding is not likely to come back out in our direction. It's certainly not going to grow. And so we need to be looking at ways of growing the attention that we get here in this region. And part of that is taking advantage of the opportunities that are presented to us. And Jenny is there for you in San Bernardino. I'm here for you in Riverside County. And we're all, Jade, Alyssa, Jenny, myself, Julie, we're here for you at the state level. And I know that Supervisor Spiegel, you are absolutely open to discussion. You are a very easy person to communicate with, very responsive. And yeah, so I encourage all of you make your voices be heard. And we will be having these conversations again.
And I truly appreciate the supervisor and Josh also staying with us the whole time. A lot of times we have electeds come in, make a couple of comments and take off, and it's great that you're actually listening. So really, truly appreciate that. And thank you for all the work that you're doing on behalf of the arts. We need our champions for sure. Jenny, did you want to say anything in conclusion from your perspective?
I really appreciate, I just wanted to give a shout out to Josh for, you know, I feel like that that like annoying gnat sometimes where I'm always like, hey, what are we doing for the arts? Come on, how can we get more money for the arts? And he's always responsive, even if he can't do anything. And to Janice Rutherford's office for her championing of the arts in the county right now. So yeah, and to all of you, because honestly, without your relationships, my work wouldn't have a lot of meaning. So thank you.
And thank your electeds too, the ones who are your champions. Make sure you do take a moment to also thank them. That's really important as well. So we're here for you. We'll continue the conversation. You'll get a follow-up email with a survey from us as well. And so please do take a moment to fill that out. It'll also include some action items that you can take in terms of communicating to your electeds specifically about what's happening for the arts and culture sector. And as Patrick and Jenny and everyone here has said on the call, it's really, really critical that we all become advocates at this moment in time, because if we don't lift our voices, I can assure you somebody else will be lifting theirs and we will not be at the table. And we want to make sure we are at the table and our needs are being addressed. So thank you so much, everyone. Have a good day, stay safe and stay well.